Your speakers sound the way they do not because of what you bought, but because of where you put them, and the 2 feet of air between your woofer and that back wall is doing more damage to your sound than any cable, amp, or DAC you have ever blamed. The audiophile community has known the actual fix for 40 years, and the reason it stays buried is that it costs nothing. So why does every beginner guide skip straight to gear and never tell you the one thing that would actually solve the problem? There are 2 speakers sitting in my listening room right now, a pair of KEFR3 Metas. They cost $2,800 for the pair. I have had them for 2 years. The first 6 months I owned them, I thought something was wrong with them. The sound was flat, congested. The bass was thick and slow, like a wet blanket over everything. The stereo image sat against the front wall like a painting. Voices had no depth. Instruments had no air around them. I had spent real money on a system that sounded like a Bluetooth speaker on a kitchen bench. I read the forums, I bought better cables, I bought a new DAC, I tried a different amplifier, nothing fixed it. The system sounded exactly the same, slightly different in ways I had to talk myself into believing, but fundamentally the same problem, the same flatness, the same congestion in the low end. The speakers were 8 inches from the back wall. That was the problem. 8 inches. That was the whole problem. And I had spent close to $700 chasing a solution to something that had nothing to do with equipment at all. I had done this before, which is the part that still stings. My first proper speakers were a pair of Monitor Audio Bronze 200s, around $700. I put them in my lounge room, pushed them back against the wall because that is where they fit, where the cables reached, where my wife agreed they could go without taking over the room. They sounded mediocre. I sold them and bought a better pair. Same position, same mediocre sound. I blamed the speakers both times. Sold 2 pairs of perfectly good speakers because I did not know one thing that takes 30 seconds to explain. Quick word before I go further. The old methods my family uses, there is more of it than fits in any one video. I gathered the whole of it into a book you can buy in our pinned comment below. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. The audiophile world has a problem with this topic, not because the knowledge is hidden exactly, but because it does not sell anything. And the entire machinery of the hobby, the magazines, the forums, the YouTube channels with affiliate links, runs on selling things. A $200 power cable has a margin. A $400 isolation platform has a margin. Telling you to pull your speakers 2 feet into the room and measure the distance with a tape measure has no margin. So it gets mentioned briefly, usually in a list of setup tips buried at the end of a review, and then the reviewer moves on to talk about the thing he actually wants you to buy. The result is that most people who get into this hobby spend their first 2 years buying equipment to fix a room problem. And the room problem never goes away because the equipment cannot fix it. Only placement can fix it. So what is actually going on inside a 4-walled room when you put a speaker 8 inches from the back wall? Because if you understand the physics, in plain language, not in equations, you will never make this mistake again. Sound travels in all directions from a speaker cone, not just forward, backward, sideways, up, down. The frequencies above about 300 Hz are mostly directional, and they go where the speaker aims them. The frequencies below 300 Hz, the bass, are omnidirectional. They go everywhere equally. And when that bass wave travels backward from your woofer, hits the back wall, and bounces forward, it arrives at your ears a fraction of a second after the direct sound. Not long. Sometimes as little as 3 or 4 milliseconds. But that is enough. The delayed bass wave adds to the direct sound at some frequencies and cancels it at others. Some notes sound boomy and thick. Other notes seem to disappear. It is not your amplifier. It is not your speaker's bass response. It is your wall playing a second version of every bass note at a slight time delay, completely out of your control. This is what the textbooks call boundary reinforcement and comb filtering. Do not worry about the names. What it means in practice is that your room is a second speaker playing everything back slightly wrong, and that second speaker is always on and you cannot turn it down. The only way to reduce its effect is to increase the distance between your woofer and the back wall. Every time you double the distance, you have the reinforcement. 8 inches to 16, 16 to 32. 32 inches is still not ideal, but it is already a different world compared to 8. Here is the sharp contrast that the equipment reviewers never want to say out loud. A $250 pair of bookshelf speakers placed correctly will beat a $2,000 pair placed against the wall. Every time, no exceptions. Not because the cheap speakers are better, because placement is doing more work for your sound than the speakers themselves. The room is 50% of your sound. The speakers are maybe 20%. Everything else, the amplifier, the DAC, the cables, is splitting the remaining 30%. If you have not sorted the room, you are polishing the 20% and ignoring the 50%. That is the mistake most people in this hobby make for the first several years. Phil made it twice. The counterintuitive truth that nobody leads with is this: you do not have a speaker problem, you almost certainly have a placement problem. And the fix is free. It requires a tape measure, 20 minutes, and the willingness to move your furniture to where it sounds right rather than where it looks right, which, I will grant you, is its own negotiation depending on who else lives in your house. But the physics do not care about your interior design preferences, and neither does the music. Here is how you do it. Start with the room, not with the speakers. Get the room dimensions, length, width, ceiling height. Write them on a piece of paper. Most people never do this. It takes 3 minutes. It is the most useful 3 minutes in home audio setup, and it is almost never mentioned in gear reviews because there is nothing to buy at the end of it. Knowing your room length gives you the rule of thirds number. Divide the room length by 3. That number, in feet, is how far from the front wall, the wall your speakers face, not the wall behind them, your speakers should be positioned. In a 15-foot room that is 5 feet out, in a 12-foot room that is 4 feet out, in an 18-foot room it is 6 feet. That is your starting position. Everything else is adjustment from there. If you want to make this precise and easy, a Bosch GLM20 laser tape measure is about $30 at Bunnings and makes it a one-person job. Not required. A regular tape measure works fine. But the Bosch makes it faster. The next thing most people get wrong is the sidewall. Everyone thinks about the back wall. Almost nobody thinks about the sidewall until they have been in the hobby for years. The sidewall reflection arrives at your ears slightly after the direct sound, just like the back wall reflection, and what it does to the stereo image is specific and identifiable once you know what to listen for. It smears it. The image gets wide in an uncontrolled way. Instruments that should be in a specific place in the soundstage move around slightly, depending on the frequency. Pull each speaker at least 18 inches from the sidewall. 24 is better, 36 is ideal if the room allows. When you get this right, the image stops spreading and starts focusing. Instruments snap to specific locations in the space between and around the speakers. It is not subtle. You will hear it immediately. Toe-in is where most beginners follow advice that is half right. Standard forum wisdom says toe-in until the tweeters point at your ears. For some speakers, that is correct. For speakers with wide horizontal dispersion, the KEFLS50, the Klipsch RP600M, most coaxial drivers, most wide baffle designs, aggressive toe-in actually narrows the soundstage and pushes the image forward in a way that feels unnatural. The trick, and this is the one people rewind for, is to dial it in by ear rather than by angle. Sit in your listening chair. Put on something with a single centered vocal. Norah Jones, Johnny Cash's American Recordings. Anything with one voice and a quiet, spare arrangement. Have someone walk one speaker through toe-in positions in 5-degree increments. You will hear the vocal move. At a certain angle, it will snap from a smear into a point, a specific located point in space. That is your angle. It may be 15 degrees, it may be 0. The speaker does not know what angle it is supposed to be at. You are finding the angle where your specific speaker in your specific room with your specific ear position produces a focused image. When you hear the snap, stop, lock it in, and do the same with the other speaker. Your listening position is the last thing people adjust, and it should be one of the first things they consider. 2/3 of the room length from the front wall. Not the back wall, not the center. 2/3. If your room is 15 feet, that is 10 feet from the front wall. Pull your chair or sofa to that line. Leave at least 18 inches of air between the back of your head and the back wall. That rear wall reflection hits the back of your head and smears the image in the same way the front wall reflection smears the base. If you cannot get 18 inches in your room, a GIK Acoustics 242 acoustic panel hung directly behind your listening position, they are about $85 each direct from GIK, will break up that reflection and recover most of what you lose. But air is free and air is better. Get as much of it as you can. Once placement is done, do the listening test. 5 minutes, no equipment required. Put on the track you used for toe-in. Sit down, close your eyes. The vocal should be in one place. A point, not a zone, not a smear from left of center to right of center. A point in space with a size and a location. If it is smeared, your toe-in needs more adjustment. If it is off-center, one speaker is physically closer to you than the other. Get your tape measure out. Measure from the front of each tweeter to your listening position. They should be equal within a 1/4 inch. If they are not, move the farther speaker toward you by the difference. 1/2 inch shift in speaker position can visibly move the image. The precision required is smaller than most people expect, which is both the good news and the reason setup matters so much. Now pull back for a moment because this is bigger than speaker positioning. The average person getting into hi-fi in Australia spends somewhere between $1,200 and $3,000 on a starter system. Within 18 months, a significant portion of them upgrade. New amplifier, new speakers, sometimes a whole new system. And the reason, almost every time, is that the system does not sound right. It sounds flat, congested, disappointing. The upgrade is almost always the wrong move. The system sounds wrong because of the room and the placement, not because of the equipment. Phil has watched this cycle play out with friends, with people who emailed after watching his videos, with people in the forums who have upgraded 3 times and are still describing the same problems they described with their first system. They are not buying better sound. They are buying the illusion of a solution to a problem they have not correctly diagnosed. The audiophiles, who have been doing this for 30 years, say it quietly, not in the forums where there is too much invested in the gear discussion, but in person. The room is half the sound. The room, not the amplifier, not the speakers. The room. And the room is the one thing in this hobby you can actually control without spending money. You can optimize it with positioning. You can treat it with panels if you need to. But the first and most powerful intervention costs nothing. It is just distance. Air between your speaker and the wall. 2 feet of air that the industry has no financial incentive to tell you about. Tonight, before you go to bed, pull your speakers out from the back wall. Do not measure. Do not overthink it. Just pull them out 1.5 feet. Sit back down and listen to 30 seconds of something you know well. The bass will tighten. The mid-range will open. The image will step back from the wall into the room. If it does not, they were already further out than 2 feet and you have a different problem, which is a good problem to have and also the topic of another video. But if they were sitting close to the wall, which most people's speakers are, you are going to hear it change in 30 seconds. Tell me in the comments what you hear. Tell me how far from the wall they were, where you put them, and what changed. I read every comment on this channel, and I want to know what happens for you. Next time I am going to show you what happens when you fix placement and the bass is still wrong, which means you have a room mode problem. There is one specific frequency that turns into a standing wave in almost every rectangular room, regardless of size and proportions. The forums will tell you the fix is a subwoofer with digital signal processing and room correction software. That setup costs $800 at minimum. There is a $40 fix that beats it in most rooms. $40. One afternoon. I will show you exactly what it is, where to put it, and how to find the problem frequency in your specific room using nothing but your ears and a free tone generator app on your phone. That one is coming next week. Do not miss it.